This is part 5, Pinheads and Patriots. We're talking about the American Revolution, and we're talking about courage, doing what is right, even if it's dangerous and even if I am afraid. Remember, we just talked about this guy that said, give me liberty or give me death. Who was that? Patrick Henry. Very instrumental. Most people do know who Patrick Henry is, so that's always a good one to know. All right, so we were talking about George Washington. Whoops. And then we were talking about the Baron von Steuben, who came to whip the troops into shape at Valley Forge. And I know my mind kind of wanders, but since we were talking about Valley Forge anyway, a very hard time. We had a German man named Baron von Steuben. He's not on your list, I don't think, but he's awesome. And he came to whip our soldiers in shape. So many of the soldiers are sick. On any given day, a third of them were sick. So 2/3 of our men died at Valley Forge, which was a very harsh winter. We didn't have proper clothing. We didn't have shoes. I mean, our shoes literally were in tatters. And I made my kids go out one time. Of course, they didn't mind because they were younger. When it snowed. And it's all well and good to talk about how you go, oh, it was cold and everything. But it's another thing when it snows outside to go outside in your bare feet. And that's what these men did. And so we all traipsed outside in our bare feet one time when it was snowing. And then they saw, whoa, it's freezing cold. Well, they marched. When they crossed the Delaware, they went in that icy, icy, icy cold waters. When there was snow on the ground, it was very, very cold. And our men froze to death. So if you think freezing to death, and they would look across, especially during that winter in Valley Forge, and they would see people, I called it making merry, you can tell my age, but they saw people dancing and partying and having enough food and lights on and all these things going. They did not even have food. So when there is many, many reasons why I love Nathaniel Green. I can't wait to go to heaven. I really can't, and get to talk to all these people. And I feel like since the Lord knows me so much, he's going to put me at a big table with all the revolutionaries, and I'm going to get to talk to them, and we're going to be besties. You don't even doubt it. I'll be besties with Francis Marion and George Washington and all these people that I just love and admire so much. And as you read their writings and as you read other people's writings about them, that's the key, is what people said about them, who served with them. It's one of the reasons why Benedict Arnold's treason was so, it just wounded George Washington. He loved Benedict Arnold. He was a general. He loved him. So anyways, we're talking about Valley Forge. Sorry, I get sidetracked. They weren't getting the supplies. And what happened is that you had this new, we had declared ourselves, we're the United States of America. So you had this new Congress. We already had the Constitution. We're declaring ourselves. We've declared ourselves. We have the Constitution. We have Congress. And they are meeting. And it's just a whole new concept, okay? So Congress is meeting. And they are sending men into battle, but they are in Philadelphia. So we're kind of having a disconnect with some of the men that they send, and which we'll talk about. Horatio Gates, horrific. To me, it's like a curse word, Horatio Gates. So I hope nobody here has a relative named Horatio. But I didn't, it was terrible. They would send people like that out, which frustrated people like Benedict Arnold. But you also had them sending supplies to the troops, and they weren't getting to the troops. Why? People that were taking the supplies, because remember, people, they're torn, their brothers might be for the English side, people are starving, so they would sell the supplies to the English, or the loyalists. They would get robbed, they would get mugged, whatever, and the supplies would not make it. So here are all of our people in Valley Forge dying, freezing to death, starving. They're getting sick, they're starving, they're freezing to death. That is all three of those things would be a horrible, horrible, horrible way to go. So General Washington approached one of his generals, and his name was Nathaniel Green. I want you to remember his name. So I was like, why don't I have a picture? Because I just pull out my old stuff because I love all these guys. So I know, kind of crazy. Believe me, I didn't even like history in high school. I promise you. My coach, I love my coaches who taught it, but I didn't like learning about it. All right, so I just pulled out my lap book and I went, oh, I have a picture of it. It's either mine or Lauren's. Okay, so this is Nathaniel Green. Can you guys see him? All right, and Nathaniel Green was a general. and he was a very good general. He was a military guy. He had fought in the French and Indian War with another guy named Daniel Morgan. Excuse me, I don't have a picture of him. Daniel Morgan, also awesome. They were both sharpshooters. They were excellent at what they did. They were great men of character. Men love to follow them. You guys all know leaders that everyone wants to follow because they're natural born leaders. That's these men. They have integrity. They look after their men. They stay with their men. Horatio Gates, who we're going to talk about in a little while, didn't stay with his men. He was a prima donna, and he would go to Congress, and then he would come back, and he'd always have new epaulets. And so he would always be higher in rank every time he came back because he could kind of schmooze the people in Congress, and they didn't understand that he was a terrible leader and shown to be later a very, very big coward. So anyway, you have Nathanael Greene, and he's a general and very good at what he does. I'm going to tell you this story because I think you guys will appreciate this. So George Washington, man that he is, I'm sure he would have done it had he could have, came to Nathanael Greene and said, Nathanael, I need you to step down from being a general. I need you to be a quartermaster. That is not unlike asking the CEO of Microsoft to become the janitor or whatever, you know, the guy who scrapes roadkill off the road out in front to keep it clean, okay? That is what he was asking Nathanael Greene. And Nathanael Greene, such a man of character, in a weak moment said, quartermaster, but nobody ever remembers a quartermaster. So what a quartermaster is they are somebody that gets supplies. They go out into the land and they get supplies and they bring it back to the troops. Remember, there's no reason our troops should have been starving. I mean, the cold is one thing. You know, we didn't have a lot of supplies. We didn't have shoes. You guys, shoes, basic necessities. And remember, the English had a limited amount of money. They had people traveling around them that ate off little tea services. They had women who laundered their clothes, who traveled with them everywhere they went. They had big spreads and they would eat. And it's one of the things, later in the Revolution, we moved so fast, they had to burn a lot of that stuff and get rid of a lot of it to keep up with Francis Marion, Swamp Fox. So, he said, I need you to step down and become a quartermaster. And Nathanael Greene was like, okay, sir, if that's what you need me to do, I'll do it. And he said, I will come back with supplies. Because they kept waiting for supplies and waiting for supplies. Have you ever done that and you think, well, it'll be here later. Well, it'll be here later, but it never comes. So Nathanael Greene got some men together and said, all right, we're going to go. And within 100 miles, we are going to unearth every stick, every twig, we're going to come back with shoes. We're going to come back with blankets to freeze to death and to starve to death, you guys. It can't be said enough, okay? We're going to come back with food, supplies, everything that we need. So he went out, and remember, so many times before, they would go out and never come back. They got bribed, they got killed, they got whatever. Well, wasn't very much later. I'm sure it was probably, at least took maybe a week or two. They look up. Can you imagine the men starving, hungry, freezing, no supplies? And they look up, and what comes from around the, kind of over the hill, but Nathanael Greene and his guys with wagon after wagon after wagon after wagon of supplies. Because he said, no stone will be unturned. And remember, the Congress was given money and supplies. It wasn't making it. But also they had the right to kind of go around and collect supplies from people. And he came with blankets, and he came with food, and he came with shoes, and all the things that the men needed. And it was like water to the men. And so as he's coming around the corner, General Washington was so proud and thought, I knew Nathanael Greene would come through. All these other guys didn't come through, but Nathanael Greene came through. So Nathanael Greene really, would the guys, even the guys that lived, would they have survived? So it gave them sustenance towards the end of that winter, gave them sustenance, gave them supplies. Baron von Steuben whipped him into shape. We also have a guy that we're going to talk about in a minute, Lafayette. I love him, the Marquis de Lafayette. He wanted to be well known. He wanted to fight in the military. He was from France, and he wanted to be well known, and he came over to America and he said, okay, make me a general. I want to be, I want to fight. And George Washington, how about I make you a errand boy, and you just are beside me, and I'm not giving you a rank, and you can learn from me. And he goes, okay, my accent's not very good. Okay. So that is Nathaniel Greene. Awesome, awesome man of character. I'm going to show you his picture one more time. Why? Because I love him. So Nathaniel Greene, he's best known for Valley Forge, but he really is known for everything, you guys. He was a sharpshooter. He fought right beside Washington with Daniel Morgan. There's a Battle of Saratoga we're going to talk about next. And during the Battle of Saratoga, he was one of the great heroes during that battle. And without him, Washington, Nathaniel Greene, Daniel Morgan, this is going to shock you, Benedict Arnold. If anybody's ever watched The Brady Bunch, probably your parents have. You learned about Benedict Arnold. That's where I first learned about him, on The Brady Bunch, because one of the kids had to be, the middle, Peter had to be Benedict Arnold. And he didn't want to be because he was a traitor. And anyway, so he fought. Benedict Arnold was a general with these guys. He was very good. He was a right-hand man to George Washington. He loved him. And the fact that he turned traitor really hurt him. All right, so next we're going to talk about Valley Forge. But before we do, I was just looking through my lap book. Why didn't I get this earlier? I have a symbol. This is the symbol that I want you guys to get for, this is the Secret Sons of Liberty. This is the symbol. I know it's kind of funny, join or die. But this is one of the symbols. Let's see if let me do it this way. Join or die. Secret Sons of Liberty. It was a secret society that started in Boston, that you wore the little medallions. And if you were caught being part of a society like that, of course you would have been killed. All right? So on to part 6, where we talk about Benedict Arnold and the Battle of Saratoga, the turning point of the war. I'm telling you, battles, I know, the first time I heard about them, I thought they weren't interesting. But when I started hearing it's really about people, to me, much more interesting. All right, on to part 6.